All right, welcome to the podcast. Today we have Alife Allah, and I have been following him for a while on TikTok. He's got all kinds of content, and we are going to cover it all right now, right here for you. So, would you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and let the watchers here know where you're coming from?
Wow. First of all, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Those who follow me on my various different platforms, especially Twitter, my usual catchphrase is I'm the
That's right.
unstoppable one. I cannot be stopped. I will not be stopped. Why even try? And it really comes to the point now that I can't even stop myself. Even if I wanted to, just doors and everything is opening, and I thank you for the opportunity just to be able, as I say, to talk my talk, and to talk about any and all things TTRPG and beyond. I'm Alife Allah. I am a black male uh, TTRPG vintage player. I like to use vintage. And we'll actually get into the reasons why I chose vintage
Mm,
versus other terms. Um, and as I said, I'm a Gen Xer, grew up in New Haven, Connecticut. Originally from Chicago, but grew up in New Haven, Connecticut since I was like 4. Um, and that's where I fell in love with, tabletop role playing games, specifically D&D in the beginning and just everything else afterwards. And I basically played, I don't want to say every TTRPG, but I'll put my resume up against anybody in terms of about the different types and the amount that I've played. And
yeah.
within since COVID, I've relocated to the Pacific Northwest, where I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, and it's been interesting because I stepped away a little bit from TTRPGs, and I during COVID and everything I re-stepped back into the space, and the space had transformed in so many ways
Yeah.
that I wasn't aware of, and so I'm still catching up in a lot of different ways in terms of a lot of the different evolutions and adaptations and everything that's been happening since then. And yeah, that's me in a bare
There you go.
nutshell. I guess in real life, I don't like to use real life, but in terms of where I get, some of my income from, I am a site manager for a nonprofit called Our Village Garden in Portland, where I oversee a community garden of about 80 plots and an orchard of about 40 plus fruit trees. We also have a market, a village market. We call it, it's a corner store, but we call it the village market that's connected to us also. So I've traditionally have always been involved with issues around food justice, food security, and also just racial health disparities. Those is kind of like my niche, you know. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I want to get into all those things that you mentioned, but why don't we start at the beginning? Can you tell me about your first tabletop experience? How did you get into it in the first place? What do you remember the first game that you played? What character class did you play? How did you feel? And did you know at that time that this was going to be like a lifelong passion?
The answer is no. I had no clue that there would be a 50-plus-year-old black man talking about fantasy role playing, science fiction role playing, comic book role. Yeah, I had no idea that that would exist. The closest that I can recall was in fourth grade.
Mm,
Um, so my neighborhood itself was I grew up in an all black neighborhood. And maybe one or two of the teachers in the elementary school were white. But outside of
mm,
that, my whole neighborhood was black. And, you know, I walked to school literally like 2 blocks away was a school. Everybody went to the same, school. We all went to the
mm,
same, corner stores, barbershop, grocery stores. But in fourth grade, they told me that I was talented and gifted.
mm,
Right. And so I went into a what we call the tag program. And
mm,
so on Fridays, I would go to another school and I would meet up with some other kids from different parts of the city.
mm,
This is where my first actually heavy hit in diversity came.
mm,
And I was already at that time pretty much very, very involved in just fantasy on various different levels, from reading mythologies, specifically Greek and Norse mythology, through comic books, um, and I probably at that time, yeah, already King Arthur, things of that nature. And in the program, they had us read Beowulf and stuff like that. So I was already
Mm.
moving
Yeah.
in that direction, right?
Yeah.
Wizard of Earthsea.
My
That was
favorite.
probably
My
yeah,
favorite.
and it was very, very important that that was one of my first fantasy books that I can recall,
Mm.
because in that book, what Ursula did was she said that Ged was brown skin, and
That's right.
that his best friend was dark skinned. So
Mm.
that was very, very important to me because
Mm.
even though I was digesting, let's say, King Arthur, and the King
Mm.
Arthur that I was digesting at that time, it neglected to mention. I didn't get to the other levels of King Arthur where you had Moradin and the other Black Knights and stuff that were part of
Mm.
the Round Table. Um,
Mm.
but it let me know, hey, wait, wizards can be black.
Mm.
Like that's what Earthsea taught me early on. So
Mm.
in the tag program, some of the boys there, they were the ones who were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so
Mm.
I remember we had our break and they had the box set, right? And I was like, first day, I was like, "What's those funny looking dice?" Like I'm just like, "Little, you got the little pyramid cap over here. You got this little
Right.
the 20 sided that I didn't know was 20 sides. Like, how many sides is this thing?" And they drew me in. They became my friends. And I remember actually, hold on just a second. I think I have it here. If I recall correctly, I'm in my room where I have a whole bunch of old stuff. But of course, while I'm looking for it, I can't find it. But Jesus Christ, I found everything else but it. I can't remember the title of the module. But it was purple. It was purple
Mm.
and oh gosh, the Forgotten City, not the Forgotten City. It was a basic AD&D module. I mean, it was a basic D&D module. So, this is something that later, you know, generations didn't realize that at that time was the beginning of the division in terms of basic D&D
Mm.
and AD&D, right?
Mm.
Um, but if you were just getting into D&D, you didn't realize that they were actually subtly distinct systems.
Right.
So
Right.
when you bought basic AD&D, you thought you had to buy the basic before advanced D&D, which was not the case. They were actually two different systems. So I ended up playing in this particular module. I was a dwarven fighter, you know, as we got back to talking about um
That's right.
what we know earlier before the podcast, we were talking about like back in the days,
That's right.
there wasn't really a huge focus on the role playing part of role playing.
Right.
I have a dwarven fire. I don't remember his name because back then it wasn't important.
He
It was
wasn't a
important.
character.
He wasn't
He
a
was
character. He
right.
was a function that, I got together with some other people, and together we were going to be able to go through the dungeon, right?
Mm.
And this is also why it was important back in the day in terms of how dungeons were designed, especially for the early modules, that you kind of had to have your bases covered, right?
Mm.
You had to have a thief. You
Right.
had to have a fighter. You had to have a cleric. You had to have a magic user. All
That's right.
right. It was necessary because there was no type of there was no kind of parallel system where someone else could diffuse or even find a trap. It just
Right.
didn't exist. So if you didn't have a thief, you were going to be all out. If you
Yep.
did not have a cleric, you would be dead, especially at
Right.
first level.
Right. Like,
And
wizards had, like, a D4 for their hit points, and you might roll a 1. You might
listen,
start at level 1 with 1 hit point.
listen, and there was no back then, there was also no of there wasn't even the option or even the thought that you would start, at level 1 with maximum hit points,
Right,
right? That became a homebrew thing that I did
right.
later on, even before it became something that because I was just like, "No one should start with 1 hit point." You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
Like,
that's
no
right.
one, someone
You're
sneezes
not
on you,
gonna
you're
make it
dead.
out. Yeah,
Right.
you're not gonna
You
make
know?
it out of that dungeon. You're
No,
not gonna
you
make it out.
you might not even make it in.
Yeah,
You're gonna stub your toe
that's
and you're
right.
dead,
That's
you
that's
know?
right.
So, like, that I call it a campaign, but that adventure for me was the
Mm,
beginning, um, and once I got a taste, I needed it all.
mm,
I needed all of it. Um, but that was actually the only time I played, the basic, D&D. From
mm,
there, everything else went to advance. I ended up my parents, I told like we mentioned before, my parents didn't know what this was. No one knew what
right.
it was.
No
This is
one.
also before the satanic panic. All right.
Mm,
So there was no pushback on it. My parents just knew that, you know, this particular game kept their son happy,
mm,
you know. So they bought the
yeah,
books. They bought the books, bought the modules, bought me the dice. When I could, I would get an issue of Dragon magazine,
mm.
and it was enough.
We we
It
should
was
talk
enough.
about Dragon magazine. I don't think people understand
Oh,
how important that book was, because no YouTube, no web
yeah,
pages, no social
right,
media, everything
right,
at the table, you had to figure out how to play on your own. There was no help. And just like you said, most people had no idea what it even was. So you were on your own, figuring out with your friends how it should be played. Yeah.
exactly. And that's and that becomes a shift in terms of generational things, right? So like there would be no way for me and you to get in contact with each other in the
Mm.
old days, right? There would be like
Zero. Yep.
the only way that it could have happened is that we were literally in the same space at the same time, and also with similar peer groups, and also with similar just type of environmental kind of things. And
Mm.
that's what Dragon Magazine, for lack of a better term, Dragon Magazine was the internet of its day in
Yeah.
various different ways. It came out once a month. It was edited many times by many of the innovators and creators of various aspects of D&D. So, Gary Gygax used to have his corner, the man who created Forgotten Realms, like he used to have, a
Mm.
particular column. And one of the major ways that you would see the evolution or things that were being pushed forward was in the
Mm.
letter column. So,
That's right.
you if you write a letter and it got in a magazine, like you
That's a
felt
big
like you were a star at that point.
that's
Like
right.
someone they acknowledged you and they answered your things.
That's right.
So
It was a
like,
big deal.
yeah, the letter column was the message board, right? It
Right.
was the closest thing that we had to a message board. A message board where think about it. Let's say for an easy number, let's say 300 people wrote a letter. 5 people per month got chosen to be answered. So it
Yeah.
wasn't even like a full message board, so I can't even imagine all the other questions and stuff that just never got in there. But anything that
Yeah.
was pushing the hobby forward, you were going to find out about it in Dragon magazine.
That's
Eventually,
right.
you will find out also about things during the conventions. But as I mentioned before, I was young when the conventions first started, and there was a slightly older generation than me, that was about 5 years older, who are basically the creators of D&D, right? The ones
Mm.
who, um, you know, I div I digested what they put out, right? So the
Right.
writers of all the books, the writers of all the articles and stuff like that, they were just slightly older than me, um, but yeah, Dragon Magazine was literally the only way. I am still overwhelmed many times by just even by D&D itself. Forget just tabletop role playing games. I am kind of overwhelmed by the amount of content that is created for D&D daily,
Right.
daily. Like homebrew classes, really? Like, it took me years to get some classes
Right.
even once I heard about them. You
New
know, like,
species, new monsters,
what?
new spells, new items
Listen, listen,
every
yeah,
day, thousands,
and with Dragon
different
Magazine,
worlds.
you didn't know what you're gonna get, right? So,
Right.
what issue you might get, "Oh, we got some new potions in here." Other ones you
Right.
might get, "Oh, they got new Greyhawk deities in here." Like,
That's right.
you also just didn't know what you were gonna get, which is part of the
Yeah.
charm,
Yeah.
definitely part of the charm,
Yeah, I mean,
that
we're
makes
looking back on it, and sometimes you have to look back objectively. There's drawbacks to it, but there's advantages to it too. It forced you to be creative. You
yep,
took this material, and you would have to figure out how it would fit into your group. And now you
right,
just are sort of told. So yeah, you have a lot of options. If you have any concept for a campaign, there's someone who has probably already done something like it that you can riff off of. But back
yep,
then it was just you, your friends, you got to agree. Sometimes you would fight over it. Like, I want to put this spell in the game. No, 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 you can't do that because blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
And you had to
definitely,
resolve everything yourselves at the table. And even just finding players, right? You would have to, now we've got all these, virtual tabletops and everything. But back then,
right,
if you had a problem player, you had to
right.
address the problem. You couldn't just,
Oh, yeah,
block them. You had to do
yep,
something about it. You had
yep,
to figure it
and
out, right?
many times, um, there's a lot of discourse that's happening right now around, whether or not, you know, people should pay to play, right?
Right.
Um, and I I think there's room for that, clearly.
Mm,
Yet there's a reason why I say there's room for that. It's because our traditional tables in the past were only, and if even if the total component weren't all friends, it usually started from a friend group,
right.
right? It usually started from people who you already were familiar with,
Mm,
right? And so I never went and hunted for people to play. People found out that I was running a particular campaign or something, and they're like, "Hey, can I?" Through some kind of connection, they would make it to the table, you
mm,
know. But nowadays, what happens is because it has grown so much, there are people who want to play, but and for various different reasons. We don't have a lot of the same um, common spaces that we used to have. We don't have, socializing is different with the internet and everything. But it's like
mm.
people now can play with a whole group of people that they are not have any personal connection with, and
Total
that is
strangers.
totally different.
Right.
Right? Yeah, total stranger.
Total
You
strangers.
know, and that's very interesting to me. Um, in terms of where we are right now. The group that I'm running now here, they they are all personal connections and friends of mine. So even
Mm,
here right now, I still kind of fell back to that old school way of just like, listen, the first people who even I feel comfortable being a game master or a player around
mm.
is like a friend group for me
Right.
personally. You know,
That's right. Yeah. I think, and you see things these days like session zero is now a thing. There was
right,
no session zero in the old days. Safety tools, right?
right,
But they come
right,
out of necessity, just like you said. It's because you're strangers. You just don't know, who you're gonna end up at the table with, and you want to have a good time. I mean, we're all doing this for fun.
right,
Yeah, and the same thing with the paid dungeon mastering. It makes perfect sense. It has gone from just being a referee where you know the rules and you're just saying, yeah, you can do that, you can't do that. Now it's a
right.
performance art because you have to
Yeah,
act all the NPCs. You have to think about what's good for the player. I have to incorporate their backstory. I have to make sure they're getting a good time. You are
right.
a maestro of the
Yeah.
of the orchestra now, and that is a skill, and skills should be rewarded with money.
Exactly, exactly, and the levels and some of these things are great levels up, right? Like, I'm still not fully there yet. Like, I cannot
Mm,
fully yet, I don't feel yet fully confident running a full digital table,
mm,
right? So, for instance, like, I feel like if we were all playing, via, some type of video app, everything, I feel fine. I feel comfortable. But like using all these particular new tools and stuff that are now available, like full
Mm,
digital tables, full digital maps, full digital character sheets, full digital, like all these things yet. Yeah, I'm not there yet.
mm,
I'll be honest with people, I'm not there yet. So I do understand in terms of people who are there, have that skill. Yeah, I have
mm,
something to learn from them. And yes, that skill deserves to be compensated. People who have these beautiful built tables and everything, first of all,
mm.
I wish I could have a whole room dedicated
Yeah,
to that
it's
and have a whole table dedicated. Like, kudos to y'all for being able to do
right.
that, and that deserves, to be rewarded. And there's a there's enough literally enough space at the table for all this to exist. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be this or that. That kind of binary kind of thinking, I think pretty much, you know, last century we realized that binary thinking is very limiting,
right,
right? Like
right.
everything from fuzzy maps, to just, the gray spaces in between
Yeah,
spectrums and stuff like that. We
false
understand it.
dichotomies. Yeah,
Yeah, we don't we
yeah,
don't we
that's right.
don't need that. So there's enough room. So
Mm,
it's about for me emphasizing all the different aspects, and you will eventually find what you gravitate to and
mm,
what you really, really will take hold of.
mm. Yeah, I think another, the other big evolution that we have now, and we were talking, and again, we were talking about this earlier, was before we started recording, was we live in a world of celebrity dungeon masters. And it's just mind blowing. When back in those days, it was the last place where you weren't really um, infected. I don't know, infected maybe is too harsh. Infected by celebrity culture. Everything else was there was a famous person. If you were interested in basketball, you had basketball players who you could look
Right,
up to, right?
right,
Whatever you're thinking of. If you're an artist, there's an artist that you can look up to. If you're a singer, there's a
right,
singer that you can look up to. And we didn't have that. You were figuring out everything by yourself. But now there is a very clear model of what it feels dungeon mastering, game mastering should be like, because we're watching these ideal people on YouTube or other places.
right.
It's a big shift.
Yeah, no, and that shift also, you're absolutely right. Like it gets to the point, it's funny because it also gets to the point just how much at the time that when we were playing back in the day, in the days of yore, um, that it was marginalized, right? Like
Mm.
the
Oh yeah.
D&D in and of itself, tabletop role playing games in and of themselves were not played by the cool kids,
Nah,
you know. And that's a part of the rewriting of history. I definitely
that's
just
right.
have to keep putting my foot down. It's just like,
Yeah,
no, the cool kids were not playing this.
not at all.
Um, It's kinda like nowadays when, I get frustrated sometimes when I go, like, for example, when the first Spider-Man movie came out, in terms of in the
Mm,
Marvel Universe and everything,
yeah.
great, great, loved it, right? But then I'm looking over, I'm just like, I was like, "Wait a minute, you don't." I'm looking at different people in the audience, I'm just like, "No, you were a bully in high school, you don't get to cheer for Peter Parker. You
Right,
don't get to
right.
identify with that," you know?
That's right. You
And
don't
so
know what that's
sometimes,
like. Yeah.
yeah, so, like, sometimes I felt
You're
like that, at first, when I was being reintroduced to
mm,
tabletop role-playing games,
that's
because
right.
it was because of the celebrity DMs and just things like Critical Role and different of these play, live play things. I was like, "Wait, it's cool now?" Like, I was genuinely confused.
Right,
I thought it was totally something else. I thought that it was, like, totally divorced from it, um,
right,
but it was a part of the evolution, right? Like, someone found that particular niche,
right,
and they went all the way in there, and it makes sense on some level, right?
right.
Because, if you went to an art school, I also went to an art school when I was in high school. So I went to
Mm,
my normal high school, and then at 12:30, I would go to this art school. And what I went there for was poetry and prose. So I was the
mm.
writing dude. But I also went with the theater kids, right? I also went with
Right,
the
there you
visual
go.
artists. I always went. So it makes
Yeah,
sense
right,
that the theater kid archetype would
right.
be attracted to this. Like, it makes sense.
Mhm. Right. It
I
used to
just
be
want
the
you to
chess club, now it's the theater club. There it
right,
is. That's
right.
the
So,
change.
yeah, so it makes sense, but it was still jarring to me at first,
Right. Yeah,
you
me
know?
too. Me too. And it was strange because I was coming from that background too. I mean, I had done a little bit of community theater, but I never connected that into Dungeons and Dragons until I moved to another place. And
Mm,
again, because people are not syncing up with how you should dungeon master, it was a completely
right.
different experience. I sat down with the player, and suddenly all these people, they had names for their characters, they
Yes,
had motivations, they were acting in character at the table. And it was freaky and weird, but I kind of
yes,
loved it.
yes,
I
yes,
kind of
yes,
loved it.
yes. It was funny to me too. So I think one of my and this is, before, the reference that I was, talking about, before we started recording, which is so once I started getting back into it, I was already running a group here. I was at an event with one of my friends. It was some kind of like nonprofit networking or something. And I was
Mm,
being introduced to different people. And somehow I was talking to someone and I mentioned that, oh, I also run like, this tabletop role playing game group, yada yada. Her daughter was there. Her
mm,
daughter, who was like 10,
mm.
she called her daughter over. Like, hey, this is A Life. He's a dungeon master for group. This 10-year-old looked up to me and her eyes opened up. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, tell me about your character. And she was telling me about her character and everything. But
Uh,
she was in awe of
yeah.
me. And I was like, oh my God. Am I the cool kid now? Like,
Now
it's
you are.
cool now? And, I think that moment to me really showed me how much
Yeah.
of the shift, um, had happened.
Yeah.
I have one of my players, so my group that I'm running now, we're doing D&D now, but
Mm,
D&D wasn't the first game that I started playing with them. But one of the out of the whole group, only one person in the group had experience playing Dungeons& and Dragons or tabletop role-playing games at all.
mm.
The other
Oh.
person the other person in the group who's very, very interesting is she is totally familiar with Dungeons& and Dragons, has a billion and one dice, watched a whole bunch of live plays, always wanted to play Dungeons& and Dragons, never found the group of people around her.
Mm,
And this was the first time that she had the opportunity to play Dungeons& and Dragons, even though she had been following it through Critical Role and different expansions and stuff for
right.
years,
Right.
And so, like, I was just like, "Wow." I was happy to give her the space to be able to play it, but I can't imagine wanting to play this game for years and no one is around you. I shouldn't say no one is around you. The avenues
Mm,
to get to it are not obvious because Portland, literally probably about 1 in 5 people who I talk to play Dungeons& and Dragons, and
mm.
it's freaky, you
That
know?
sounds very that sounds very Portland.
Yeah, yeah, there's cafes here. There's literally a
That's right.
place, I haven't got to it yet, but it is a they serve, like, craft beer and, like, game nights,
Uh,
like,
yeah,
very
that
Portland,
sounds very
you know?
Portland. Well,
You
so
know?
this is really interesting because you've got these new generation of players who are coming onto your table and they've
Mhm,
seen it, but they've never experienced it. So there must be this dissonance, right? Between,
mhm.
when you watch Critical Role, those that is not a normal game ever. Your
Right,
player, those the play it's yeah, Matt Mercer is an amazing dungeon master, but those
right.
players, they are all amazing players and they're
Yes,
all invested. They're all
yeah,
completely invested in what's going on. And the reality is when you get to a normal table, it's
yeah,
it's different. People are just they just want to hang out. They just want to have a craft beer. They want to make
yeah,
some crack some and they crack jokes on the show, but this is
right.
like just really off topic kind of stuff. They're
Mhm,
the focus, you can lose focus in the middle of a campaign really fast. So I'm really
yeah.
curious, how did she integrate into the group since she's got this mental model from the outside actual plays. How did she do?
What what's interesting is we didn't play D&D first.
Mm,
So, in my time of playing, role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, and we can get into this later about OSR, which is the old school revival, right?
mm,
So, there was a particular way that we played D&D back in the day that was very, very I don't like the word mechanical, but
mm,
it's very, very there's not a heavy element of role play
mm,
of actually embodying a character personality traits and things of that nature, but very, very um, boiled down to like essentials. So, for
mm,
instance, you're going into a dungeon. Do you have
mm,
enough rations?
mm.
You know, do you have enough torches?
Right.
That
Do you have arrows?
uh, do you have enough arrows? You're counting your arrows. You're counting
Right.
your spell components. You
Spell
know,
components.
it's logistics, like, what is the marching order?
Right.
There's someone
Marching orders.
you're actually drawing out the map,
Right.
yourself with what the dungeon master is telling you, so you're doing, like, grid by grid, you
Right.
know? Um, and then there was a shift that kinda happened to and this also wasn't just, unique to D&D. All the other role-playing games at the time kind of followed this model. All
Mm,
right. So whether you were playing like a sci-fi game like Traveler,
mm.
or a post-apocalyptic game like Gamma World, they still
Right.
follow that same model, right? And I think the shift for me personally happened um, when I was in college. I got heavily into the White Wolf games.
Me
All
too.
right.
Me too.
Yeah, so we're
Yep.
talking Vampire the
Yep.
Masquerade, we're talking Mage the Ascension, we're
Mage.
talking,
Uh,
Werewolf the Apocalypse.
that's right.
Those games had another level that's where I started doing role play,
Right.
right?
The
Because
whole mechanics are built around role playing. You make roles to do social actions, not just
ex
not just a persuasion check. There are
right,
different ways to persuade someone, and you got to
right,
figure it out. And you're the story. It's not the game master. They're called the storyteller. The storyteller has to figure out what the role is, and it's just not for
exactly,
everything. If you want to do some research, there's a bunch of different roles for that. If you want to investigate something, it's not an
yes,
investigation role. It's a bunch of roles. So you are completely the mechanics are making you think about the game in a completely different way. Yeah.
exactly, and that is something that I didn't realize until I was pretty much well into playing, the different White Wolf systems. I was realizing that different systems weren't just different games. That different
Mm,
systems allow you to play a game different and allows you to tell stories in different ways. And so, because that then became my experience with like, okay, this is what role playing is. Still not to the full level that we have for like live plays and stuff, but
mm,
still understanding that role playing being a component of quote unquote role playing games. And
right.
so the first games that we played was Spire, The City Must Fall.
Yep.
And then we also did a campaign, I did a Academia campaign of Mage the Ascension. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so both of those enable them to really, really hone in on role play.
Mm,
And what was interesting also, even about the Mage Dark Academia, is that um, only one of my group had been, beside myself, had been to college. Right?
mm,
And so the setting was that they were college students. So not
mm.
only were they role playing as freaking mages of these different traditions, they
Right.
were role playing being in college. I
You
literally used the map of my old college. I
there you
I had
go.
them choose
Brilliant.
I had them choose their courses, and it was great because I'll be like, "Oh, this time of day, this person's here, this person's here, this person's here." And so it would I didn't plan it this way, but we played these 2 games before we ended up playing the actual Dungeons& and Dragons.
Wow.
So by the time we got to Dungeons& and Dragons, they were now I guess it's more like a hybrid because
Yeah.
I still don't run my campaigns fully like, let's say, a full, like, live play, right?
Mm,
Um and I do have a little kind of more OSR kind of elements in my
Mm,
particular running of D&D. But they became more comfortable in terms of role playing because they had the experience using systems that
mm,
encourage that, you know.
mm.
So yeah. And then
So
I had a homebrew world. So since I had a homebrew
oh,
world, they had to be more invested in learning about certain aspects of it for their character's sake. It wasn't just
mm,
going to be like, oh, you're just going to be like, I don't know, a high elf. No, this particular
mm,
high elves in my game had this particular history, yada yada.
mm,
So those elements all help them. And yeah,
mm.
she's literally one of the star players, in whatever
Yeah,
system we
that's
play.
great. Does
You
she have
know,
a favorite system now? Does she prefer to go back to Spire, or does she prefer Dungeons& and Dragons?
I think that whole group actually loves Spire. They love Dungeons and
Mm,
Dragons, don't get me wrong. And actually the whole group started because they wanted me to run a Dungeons and Dragons game. And
mm,
I told them that I was not prepared yet to fully run a fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. So I was gonna take the
mm,
time to really, really prepare for that. And so until that time, I was gonna run these other ones. And
mm,
they definitely enjoy all the systems, both of the systems. But I think it's more so the settings and the
mm,
stories that are being told versus the actual comparing of systems per se for them.
mm, mm, mm. Gotcha. Yeah, the setting. Yeah, okay, cool. So that is a good segue because I want to dig into Spire. So after the break, let's do that. But
Right.
right before we go to the break, there was one thing I want to circle back to, which
Uh-huh.
was you refer to the old style of gaming as vintage.
Uh-huh.
I want you to get into why you use the word vintage.
Okay. So there is a term, and Lord it is escaping my mind right now. Begins with a G. That refers to old school players. Gogward?
Conword.
I
I don't
can't
know.
remember the name for it. But
Yeah.
it what it refers to, like, specifically is a particular type of soldier in a particular old European country. I can't remember, you know. So a lot of the old players have been using this term to refer to themselves as an old, they play the old way, they play the old school way. But
Mm,
it is so filled with judgment and prejudice
mm,
that I just cannot be connected with it. So,
mm,
like anything that deviates from what was written, you know, probably before 1984, they frown their nose at, you know.
mm,
Um, and the problem I have with that is that nothing is perfect.
mm,
Nothing ever was perfect. And
mm,
that if you're dealing with, D&D in and of itself at the time, as I said before, it was a marginalized game. It was played by marginalized people. But even
mm,
within a marginalized group, you do have different groups of marginalized people within that group. And so,
mm,
like, even early on, I detected racism within D&D. I detected
mm,
sexism within D&D.
mm,
Um, they fully embrace that.
mm.
Um, and that's why I don't like to rock with the term because they're just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, don't change it.
Yeah,
you're
it makes
just
sense.
sensitive.
Uh,
You're just sensitive to this." I was like, "Yeah, no, I was called an orc." Like as a racial term,
not acceptable, not
not
acceptable.
acceptable. Or even some of the topics we're talking about nowadays, for
Mm,
example, um, the combat wheelchair, right?
mm,
People
oh,
have
right, that's a big hot topic. For some
and
reason, people have a problem with it.
and why I don't it boils my mind because I'm just like, you didn't
Why
explain
not?
how that dragon got all the way at the lowest level of your dungeon,
Right?
right? You're talking about realistic. Like you didn't talk about the ecology of the dungeon. Like, what is that freaking dragon eating all the way down there all the time?
Right,
Or you're okay with the one with the skippy chainmail that don't protect anything, you know.
right.
But the wheelchair, oh my gosh. And the other thing from that, like even the arguments are kind of stupid, which is just like,
Yeah.
well, there's magic in the world. Why don't they just get a medic? Listen, don't you live in this world where we have money to cure like a whole bunch of diseases and everything that just doesn't happen
Right.
due to various different factors,
Yeah.
or they forget that there are handicapped, you know, for lack of a better term, they are differently
Yeah.
abled handicapped individuals in canon in D&D.
Right.
Like,
Right.
did anybody forget about Vecna?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to use any of the artifacts of Vecna, the eye or the hand, your character can't have a hand, it can't have an eye.
Right.
You don't you like do any of your pirates. So all your pirates, none of your pirates wear a patch over their eye. None of your pirates
Right.
have a peg leg. Like stop it.
Yeah.
It becomes ridiculous and it literally just becomes a way
Yeah.
to keep people out. And for me, tabletop role playing games as a whole has always been about ways to invite people
Yeah.
in. So yeah, that's pretty much the way
Absolutely.
why it's yeah.
It's just like the Wizard of Earthsea. It's words shape reality. So when you go back and you
Ooh.
call it vintage, that's what
Uh-huh.
you're doing. That's what you're
Right,
doing. Cool.
right.
Let's take a quick
Yeah.
break, and
All right.
I'm gonna get some water, and we'll come right back.
All right, sounds good. I'm gonna get water too.
Okay, so I'm just leaving it recording. So just come back whenever you like.
Mhm. Let me find my what's this over here?
Yeah.
What else is over here? Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to find that module.
Oh
I
yeah,
know I'm
yeah.
gonna
The
find.
the
I
purple
know I'm
one,
gonna
huh?
find it. As soon as I found it.
There
It's
you
the
go.
lost. I was right. It's the lost city.
Lost City.
It's it's this one. I don't know
I
if you
don't
can
know if I've
see it.
played that, but it is very vintage.
Oh my
Like,
god, the art is incredible in it. Look,
yeah,
and
it
you
had its
had
own vibe back then, didn't it?
Ye Fast Pack. You
Ye
had,
fast
you chose
pack.
one of these, like you had a collection of you gotta have a pack A, you have like a backpack, a large sack, lantern, 2 oil flask,
There
12
you go.
iron, like very, very centered on logistics.
Equipment.
Very, very
Yep.
much so,
Yep.
you know? And of course the ubiquitous blue and white
There you
maps,
go. That's
throughout
right.
all modules.
That's
I
right.
never understood. That's something I need to research too. I don't know why those particular colors were chosen for all the maps.
I'm wondering if it has to do with being able to Xerox them.
You're
Um,
right. You're
Maybe
right.
something it's gotta be it makes it come out better, or I don't know.
I
That's
think
my only guess. That is
I
my
think
only
you're
guess.
absolutely right that it has to do with Xeroxing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that smell that doesn't exist anymore of the real copiers with the rolls and
The old
yeah,
the '80s, we had so many smells that don't exist anymore.
I
So many
know.
smells. Do you miss
I
them?
know.
I miss some of
Yo,
them.
I
Not
do.
all of
I
them.
do. I do. I do. I It's an interesting catalog, but you're right. We had interesting smells and just things that I didn't think I would miss. I miss,
Yeah.
or I'll see something that'll just bring back like a rush of memories that I didn't realize like I had such a strong connection to these things.
Yeah. There's all
Yeah.
we had the one I remember from school is there was some kinda it was like a glue or a paste that we used. I can't quite
It,
remember.
it,
It was like when you
it's
took a
blue.
test, there was like a special glue for I have trouble. I don't remember the circumstances, but I remember the smell, and I have not smelled it since maybe 1991, and it's been gone.
I know,
There
just like
but all
it's things
kinds of
like
stuff
that.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, and I think that's something that's interesting even about role playing games, right? Like
Yeah.
I found like even walking back into the sphere and talking with people from my era, like I forgot about certain things. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I remember that, or just like how important it was, to me, or shaping even how I
Mhm.
do things today, even in the tabletop role playing space. So when I hear
Mm.
certain things certain time, I'm like, oh, let me go see if it's in this Dragon magazine, or like
Yeah.
I found online, I found an archive of all the Dragon magazines. Um, yeah, so I'll hit you with that. I've been keeping that
That's
on the low.
oh, yeah,
I don't.
that's a secret, like, that's
I
literally a dragon's hoard, like,
Right,
of
right. I
of
don't I don't wanna
content.
gatekeep, but I have
Yeah,
an
don't
idea of what I wanna do for some content, um,
Yeah, yeah.
based on those. I think I might
Oh, go for
do,
yeah, looking
I might
forward
do
to
each
that.
episode. I might do each issue as
Yeah, you
content.
should. That
Um,
would be
I
amazing.
also I also found a a reservoir of the Wormy cartoon in the back of Dragon magazine. Do you remember the Wormy?
That's right. That's
I
right.
found the archive of those too.
Yeah.
I'm a big person in terms of finding things on the like digital art. Oh god, I wonder if that's related to me playing tabletop role playing again. But yeah,
It's
I'm
gotta
really
be.
big on
It's
like
gotta be.
finding this treasure and it's like, oh my gosh, I found it.
It's so
But
exciting.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. Very good. It's good. Well, I think this could end up to be a 4 hour. This is what I was thinking actually while we were kind of live with the
Uh-huh.
recording. You should just come back and we'll have multiple episodes.
Listen, let's
Let's
go.
just do
Like I
let's
said,
just do
like
let's just do that.
let's
Like,
just do
so I have 2 I got, like, while I had a couple while you were, finding the lost city, I
it.
had an idea. So, like
Uh-huh.
so I re so this service here I'm using is called StreamYard, right?
Mhm,
And so it has a couple options about how you display the screen, right? So it
mhm,
can be one person, it can be two person, it can be two
mhm.
person with kind of a background, it can be multiple people. So whoever's currently talking, we can have three or four people on at the same time. You've got this
Ooh,
option where it's got this, but look at this one. Okay, so it's you and me, right? But I
yeah.
can overlay pages of something, right? Like, so if we
Ooh,
wanted to do another episode, we can talk about Spire today at like a
yeah.
high level, but we
Uh-huh.
could do a deep dive of Spire and I can just pull up the I'm gonna I mean I bought it already and I'm in Japan. It's gonna take a month to get here, but I have the
Uh-huh.
PDF.
Yeah.
And so I could put up pages
Oh, that
and
would be
I haven't played it yet, but I'm very enthusiastic. And so the strategy is you're going to educate me on Spire and I'll ask
oh,
some new DM, new game master questions because I want to
yeah.
run it. I want to play in it. I really want to play in it, but I don't know if I'm going to find anyone to run it for me over here. So I'm going to have to
Oh,
just yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no,
So we could
so
have just a deep dive episode where we just talk about Spire
oh,
and
yeah,
go
I
into it.
love
And
the idea. I love the
yeah.
idea. So, I am going to run an online campaign of Spire
Mm,
probably in September.
okay.
Um, I was setting to do it last summer and just so many different things happened. I actually had
Mm,
the players from all different places and everything. The hardest thing, of course, is always the freaking time.
timing. Yeah,
Um,
always.
Another thing
Yeah.
we didn't have to worry about back in the day, right?
Right.
Like, you
Because
didn't have to worry
I
about
was gonna
that.
s I was gonna say, like, we would just have a weekend. As Friday
Right.
afternoon rolls around and,
Oh,
especially when I was in high school, you would just stay in your friend's basement for
yeah.
50 hours, not
Yeah.
48, like 50, maybe 56 hours.
Straight.
Just not go
Straight.
anywhere. Just
Straight.
just
Did you have I
marathon.
don't know if they discontinued it by the time. No, they didn't discontinue it probably by the time. Do you remember, Jolt Cola?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Jolt.
yeah, yeah,
Jolt.
yeah, yeah. We had
It's
Jolt, like, we had, like, this
illegal in 7 states because
right?
it's got too much caffeine in it.
The parents of whatever house I was at, they would order, like,
Right,
pizza or whatever, and I look
right,
back and I'm thinking about just, like, as a parental thing, it was
right.
great for them, right? They
Oh,
knew where
kept
everybody was,
kept me out of
you
trouble for
know,
sure.
they were
Kept me
they
out of
were out of trouble, so, like, on that level, I get it,
Yep,
but yeah, no, I'm with that for Spire because I have stuff for Spire that's not even in any of the books
right,
because I deep dive even through their Discord. I'm in communication with players across the pond
right,
about it, and like I'm looking forward also to. I haven't done them yet, but there's about 4 or 5 other homebrew classes that
right.
aren't in any of the books that are
Okay,
incredible, and I am
okay.
going to drop those, and people are going to go bananas. Yeah,
Yeah. Alright.
yeah. There's a
We
yeah.
can put them in we can so I've got so when I put this up, it's gonna go on YouTube, but, you've got that space. Whatever links you want me to put up there, I'm happy to put up there. I can do the same thing in, Spotify. You've got story notes. I can put links in there. Anything,
Oh,
absolutely any
nice,
link you want me to put in, I will put in. Anything,
nice,
any
nice.
link to anything. If you've got a Patreon, if you have something you want to monetize, I will put it up.
Yeah.
It's all you.
All right,
It's all you.
beautiful,
I'm happy to do
beautiful.
that. Cool.
Honestly, like part of my part of my realization actually last year was when I was talking with a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a
Mm,
while, and I was telling her about my new job and everything. And then I started talking a little bit about the role playing stuff I was doing. And she was
mm.
like, I know you love your job. I know you're invested in your job. She's like, but that role playing stuff, that's your passion.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
and
Yeah,
and since then, I think Critical Role actually has given me some insight on that, which is just like, all right, there are paths of monetization. Like the
right.
reality is, younger me should have been told that I could become part of tabletop role playing games creation.
Mm,
I
mm,
did not think that, and I actually until I was well into my adulthood, I didn't even think that this is someone who literally went to art school for writing.
mm,
I still did not think that I was a good enough writer.
mm.
I have books now published in my name, dealing with, like food justice and health stuff like that. But still, like even in the fiction and role playing, it's taken me, some time, but like things have been happening now. Um
Yeah,
in a crazy level. Like I'm here talking to you on a podcast about tabletop role playing. Things like
yeah.
this weren't happening before.
Yeah,
So,
I never would have imagined it either. Never would have imagined it. And I don't know, COVID is part of it. Something clicked. I got, so here in Japan, we had a lockdown for 3 months, but they don't have the government doesn't have the legal authority to actually make people stay in their houses. So
oh
everyone
wow.
had their masks on, they were walking around, but it was kind of a social shame to be irresponsibly walking around, right?
Right.
I had to so what I do, I'm an English teacher. So I teach English mostly to kids, and it's an after school program. So they come here, 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and we just do play games in English mostly. And so I had to close the school because the schools were closed for like 3 months straight.
Oh wow.
And so I didn't have anything to do. Had all my lesson plans for the year were already set anyway, and I couldn't go meet my friends. I live near Osaka, but I live in the
Okay.
countryside. Um, so it takes a couple hours by train to get over there. So I didn't have anything to do, and I was just like, I had a we had a group, like a monthly group, but I don't know. I just needed to get out and see some new people, and that was it. Found Roll 20, the virtual
Mhm.
tabletop, and
Yeah.
looking for groups online. Found some people on Reddit, which is not a great
Wow.
place to recruit people. But it's eventually you find one or two people that you get along with, and you're good to go. And so it just reignited something in me that I had been playing, but I hadn't been passionate about. It's just something I kind of liked, but something just
Right.
clicked. It was just like there was an energy shift in the whole world, and it was
Right.
just damn bam. But what's crazy is there was some other stuff that happened to me too. So I'm a bass player, right? I play bass guitar. Um,
Nice.
Same thing that happened, clicked. I'm still playing bass, but I moved to playing acoustic guitar and electric guitar because
Oh
I'm
wow.
writing my own songs. Never did that before.
See?
Used to kind of draw things. I do
Mhm.
abstract art now. It was just like this weird creative
Nice.
explosion, and this was the last, kind of the last mile where it all sort of connects.
Nice.
um
Nice.
it was just something about it. I don't know, watching this, going back real quick, Gen X, we have a very unique view of the history of humans, because I think, or some my earliest memories are walking around, because I'm from a small town, just
Mhm.
walking around on grass, looking up at the
Yeah.
sky,
Mhm.
and now, and no internet, no, the phones, you had to dial the phones, all that stuff. You had
Yeah.
records. Friends would come to your house and you'd listen to records, right? I trying to tell my daughter's
Right.
16. I was trying to
Right.
tell her about that, and she couldn't even conceive of it. Like, why would you go to your friend?
No.
Why would you go to your friend's house and listen to a record? But then here we are at this pivotal
Yeah.
point, like where AI is coming out, and it's at the same level in human history as inventing fire. We have unleashed
Oh,
a new
definitely,
form of
definitely.
informational fire, and who knows
Yeah.
where it's going
No,
to be. But
definitely.
we have had our generation has this front row seat to the whole thing. I don't think anyone
Yeah.
else has
No,
that perspective
I
on it.
totally
Yeah.
yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that because, like, there was something that in terms of, like, time was slower, right?
Right.
There wasn't, like, this immediacy, that needed to happen. Um, we have a different relationship to time just in general, right? Like,
Mm,
I was got home from school and I went outside to play with my friends, you know?
mm,
And when the street lights came on, that's when I came back in, you know?
mm.
But like I couldn't tell you like what point when I was outside, if it was like 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Like I didn't have that kind of time sense,
It's just
right?
dark. You
Um,
just go home when it's
right,
dark. Right.
exactly. You
You
know,
just
so but it's very, very in tune with like just a lot of indigenous foundational type of
right.
living practices, right? Like you
Right.
don't have a hard line on time. You go according to the seasons,
That's
you
right.
know, the weather,
Right.
things like that. And I think that, like you said, like we have a front row seat to this AI thing, and I think we also what we bring is like we understand. I think people are younger generations are discovering a lot of the joy that comes from doing things communally together in terms
Right.
of communal storytelling.
Oh, man, that's
We
yes,
know that.
exactly right. Right.
We know it and knew it, and we're just kind of bringing it
Right. We're shepherding people back to
forward
where we should have been.
now. Many of us, like for them, they literally are exactly. So it's
Mm.
interesting to see, and that's what
Yeah.
I mean about there's space for everybody at the table. Everybody has something to offer. If you just have
Mm.
this the the standpoint that the game was only good back in the day, they build a time machine and go back to in the day, because we're at a different
Right.
point now where there's new things being revealed and offered, and we can learn from that. Like
Mhm.
I'm learning every day when I'm up here on TikTok,
Right.
because shoot, there was not an artificer. You know what I'm saying? There was not an
Not a
artificer,
thing.
the bard sucked.
Right. The
I
bars were
can't
terrible, now
express
they're
to people
great.
how bad the bard.
Nobody
Right,
played the bard.
like, I don't understand even why they created the bard like that back then, because there was literally no other class that you had to jump through so many hoops to just be the
Right.
class. So there wasn't even, like, a parallel class that you could have a bard at your party, what? It sucked, you know?
That's right.